I'm so happy to see you.
Good morning. I know
Good
you look
morning.
stylish. I like the red
Oh,
glasses, the
thanks.
earrings.
Thank
You.
you. I
Mm-hmm.
miss seeing you. I'm so happy to see you. And I love what
Thank,
you're doing.
thank you. Hey, what's in your teacup?
My teacup is a tea bag. I wish I could say that I like mixed my own herbs, but it is um, Tulsi green tea, which says that it's, I brought the package because I knew you'd be asking me, stress
Okay.
relieving and empowering. But it's this, yeah, it's empowers small family farmers to cultivate regenerative organic farmland, bringing blah, blah, blah. But I really like it because it's green tea, and so it's like a little bit of caffeine, but it's
Yeah.
sort of soothing enough, but it has a little bit of kick. It has sort of a citrusy thing happening. I like it.
Yeah. Oh, so it's a
I,
fair trade tea as well.
yeah, I have a bunch. I have a variety of green teas, and I like them when they add in other herbs. If they have like
Yeah.
citrus or spearmint. I've got like four to five different green teas.
Yeah. Now, I'm a real black tea drinker. Although at the beginning of this year, I did like a 10-day green tea challenge because green tea is so healthy. So it's like, and it was a way to force myself into drinking more green tea. And I have this one. It's a vanilla mint green tea.
Mm, mm,
And it's good. It's relaxing, so I can drink that down. And then I have a lemon green tea
I
that
love
I'll
them.
drink as well too, just to kind of help me get through it. Because otherwise, if I just drink like straight green tea, like just sencha green tea or matcha, I
Mm,
did buy me some matcha powder and made me some smoothies with that. But girl, that's like taking down
harsh.
grass.
Yeah, it can be harsh. I love like my favorite is lemon ginger or lemon or ginger. Some
Yeah,
combination of those. I love those. And
yeah.
actually, I love coffee. Like I love coffee. And I like
Mhm.
my body just I had when I moved here, I had all of these health issues that I'm still dealing with. I mean, nothing awful, but like all these like really and heart palpitations. And I finally just said, okay, I guess I don't get to have this anymore. So I'm back to green tea. And black tea is even too harsh. So I have like 3 or 4 cups a day of green tea and some
Right. Well,
herbal also.
for you though. Like when I
Yeah.
did that challenge for 10 days, I lost 3 pounds.
What? What did you
Yeah,
do?
I just drank green tea. I mean, I was eating other things, but yeah, but that's one of the benefits of green tea, along with the antioxidants and the well, all the other things they do. They do so many different things.
Whatever. I don't know what it does. Yeah.
Appetites and weight loss is part of it.
I haven't had that.
Already
But
on the gym bus.
uh,
Uh,
Um, but the equally interesting is this cup, which when I was moving, actually when my mother was moving, I rescued this cup that was painted by my daughter. So when I drink, you'll be able to see her initials on the bottom, and I love it. I have two daughters, and this is my older child, and it's like, you know, she was little, so it's like a just total stream of
but
conscious, like it's a
it's
wonderful
nice
mess.
though. I really thought it was like it looks
Gorgeous.
artistic. I didn't think I thought it was how you bought it.
Yep.
It's like really
It's
nice.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I wish I had a
Yeah,
set of them.
exactly. Exactly. No, that's all good. Well, you see my little tea where it's straight up English tea time
So pretty. Yeah, with a
style.
little
Yeah.
handle.
Like I love this kind of little stuff. But so what tea would best describe you?
I spent an embarrassing amount of time thinking about the question because I am not good at superlatives. And I want to say that probably it is like turmeric ginger or something like that. But the truth is that I feel like might sound like a cop out, but I feel like I could identify with all of them. That's my thing is I really um I could make the case that I am most like, black tea or the different versions, not Earl Grey maybe so much, but English breakfast. I could say that I'm matcha or sencha, I could, but the one that I think like turmeric ginger, that's my standby because it's sort of rooted in the east of the globe, and it's spicy but soothing. I think that's probably it. Huh.
What was the last one? It got a little choppy for me a little bit. You said it was spicy. Which tea are you talking about? Chai?
I'm talking about turmeric ginger. It's like
Turmeric ginger. Okay.
it's soothing, but it's
Yeah.
spicy and it gives energy, but like not falsely, so there's no caffeine. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. You went off camera, Ilana.
Still, I see everything as though it's all good and healthy.
There you go. Oh,
Mm,
maybe it just went out. Maybe it's a choppy connection, but that's okay.
I don't know.
So Ilana and we met through Interfaith when I worked for Interfaith, and at that time you were like part of the head of the board or something like that.
I'm, yeah, on the executive committee, yeah.
Yeah. And I told Ilana about Not Your Mama's Tea, my tea club, and I was having a tea party, and she came to my tea party, and it was cool,
Yeah, I liked it a
right?
lot. Yeah,
It was fun. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and so I definitely wanted to make sure I talked to her today. She has moved away, but we have virtual connections, so it's all right. It's all good.
Can
And
I?
so I wanted to make sure. What? Go
I
ahead.
want to say something about your tea party, because in Milwaukee, like part of my job was interfaith, intergroup relations. So I spent a lot of time getting outside of my comfortable neighborhood, in segregated Milwaukee. I spent a lot of time. And still, the experience of coming to your tea party was it was so unique in that it really did let me go as a regular person, not as a person with a job, into a neighborhood where I didn't spend a lot of time, into a building where I otherwise probably wouldn't have gone, with all of our racial differences or divides. It let me come into a space that um, I just wouldn't have known how to go into otherwise. And I say that as somebody who like went into a lot of spaces. I think that stuff is
Yeah.
the boundaries, the borders between us are so hard to pass through. So anyway,
Right.
I was really
I know
grateful.
you thought it wasn't gonna be. You thought you were gonna be the only white person there,
I thought,
and
yeah,
I was like, no.
which is
And so,
I'm yeah.
yeah, go
And
ahead.
I'm excited for the opportunity to be uncomfortable and be the only white person. But I was still like, okay.
Right,
If
and
you, you know,
it wasn't that one of my other white friends who comes to the tea when I have them, but of course COVID has changed that, right? So we're not meeting. She's like, I just love coming here because, like you said, it's not a forced uh diversity type thing. It is diverse because I'm a diverse person. I mean,
right.
I'm a person who I think I attract people of all backgrounds, and you don't have to. One, I don't like pretense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm me. Period.
Yep, yep.
And so I try to invite that kind of same genuine flair to what I do. Still black the whole time.
I
I
love
still
it.
center blackness the whole time, but me centering who I am as a black woman does not diminish anybody else. When we
Yeah.
are really fully who we are and we're being ourselves, that shouldn't diminish another person. If you're being,
Mm-hmm.
authentically living as a human and not trying to oppress another person,
Right, right, right.
which I'm not. I'm just, living in that space of like, I think what I would call as like, what is that spiritual space of spiritual goodness and really trying to live into that. Then I think that's honest. And even if you make a mistake, it's just a mistake you've made. It's not because you're really trying to hurt or harm anybody, because you're better than or superior to. And so the tea has been great because for me, Not Your Mama's Tea was to be a place where people can just naturally network without the pretense, the who's who, you got to have a business card or a speech ready. No, because women, we naturally talk anyway. We're going to talk, we're going to say what we do. And so I was thinking for myself as a young professional, what did I want when I first graduated college? I was like, man, it would have done me so good if I would have had some real mentorship and connection
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and people really helping me along as a professional, but I really didn't get that, not the way that I think I would have wanted it. And so that's part of really why I started Not Your Mama's Tea. I was thinking about that young professional who's just graduating college, or someone who was like my mom, divorced at 50 and have to start all over.
Mm,
How can
mm.
we get this intergenerational space together and just talk as women? And I feel like that at Not Your Mama's Tea, at those parties, that is the best of it. I give space and platform for women to share what they're doing. And it was across age and across race. Just a beautiful thing over a cup of tea, some hip hop music, and good treats.
That's so great, and it's low barrier. You don't have to have all the answers. The subject is something that everyone can identify with. I really love it. That's really wise.
Yeah. I,
Yeah,
I loved it too. I love it. I miss that. I miss meeting the new people. And so that's really why I started doing tea talks.
yeah, I love it. I
So
said, yeah, go,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say,
No.
I spent a lot of time in in Milwaukee, also going into a lot of spaces that were super ideological, and so you had to I had to prepare myself for how I needed to think about things, whatever the ideology was, because there were lots of them. It wasn't just one, and there's something so nice about getting past ideology and just like connecting with people, heart to heart, mind to mind. It's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, for real. And so we were talking about our interfaith experience,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the things, even getting into that, which I think we both were saying we enjoy, is we learned a lot being in that interfaith space. Again, it wasn't for me. It was no script or like you need to go read all about this, faith before you engage. It really was like, okay, let's all these different groups of people from all these different religious backgrounds come together and holding space together out of this mutual respect.
Yeah.
Out this mutual respect that we don't often get to see in our country, in our world. And I just loved it.
Yeah, I loved it too. It was, the job that I had for a decade was there was lots of different parts of it, and interfaith, intergroup relations was just one part, and it was the most nourishing. It taught me the most. Like there was so much, I did a lot of like policy work, and I was the local address for anti-Semitism, so it was it was a wearing job, right? And so I was involved in a lot of everything fits together. So the interfaith, intergroup relations also end up focusing on hate because, you know, hate is hate. And anyway, the interfaith, intergroup relations were just an opportunity often to like take a breath together and,
Mhm.
center ourselves on something beyond our, the crisis of the moment or our, particular, what's the word, parochial interest. It was really, really, and it was always great also to sort of dig around and figure out how to connect with others because it's not always obvious and easy. It was
Right.
also, I have to say that one of the things I learned at Interfaith that I didn't expect. So when super interesting because when I became chair, it was a bit of a fraught process because I think that there were concerns about having a Jewish chair. I think I whatever that there were concerns because of Israeli-Palestinian whatever. It ended up it was totally not a thing, but there were concerns that they had to like check and question. Anyway, what was interesting is that when I became the chair, I was in the executive committee, often the only woman in the room, and I, as a woman, I've been at the front of rooms, and generally my style has been collaborative, and maybe even like hedging on making decisions because I'm, so collaborative, and I'm, kind of a pleaser, and all the things that can often come with being a woman. And I remember my first meeting at the executive committee. I sat on the side of this, that little rectangular table squished into the corner in interfaith office, and I noticed that I kept getting interrupted, and I was like, sort of, not comfortable being in charge. And the second meeting, I was like, okay, no, if I'm going to be, and I positioned myself at the head of the table, and I ran the meeting. And I noticed, and it took a while, but I noticed that there was somebody in the meeting who kept interrupting me, or would like interrupt me and then restate what I said. And so I had to learn how to. I learned a lot about, like there was no malice, but there are patterns of how men and women behave in rooms together. But I really learned how to assert myself in a way that suits me as the person
Hmm.
leading the meeting. If somebody's interrupting me and I'm like, you can
Wow.
wait a minute. It was such a good experience.
That is really neat. That could be a whole nother, talk, which is one part of what I love too. Is like, in thinking about this, and we'll get to the main question is about what woman inspires you.
Mm,
But it is really thinking about, how do we as women position ourselves? How do we assert ourselves? How do we allow our voices to be heard? And you had a strategy. You noticed what was going on, you put a strategy in place, and you executed it that you could be able to do what you needed to do,
mm.
assert yourself, and make sure that your role and your space was solidified in the room. And so I think that is really cool.
It
That's a
was
good
I
story.
adjusted, and I also then we had another woman on the executive committee, and she's so smart and so lovely, and so I often like tried to raise her voice or make space for her voice too. It was
Yeah,
great, and the
yeah.
men were terrific too. It was just a good
Yeah,
experience.
but no, I understand what you're saying, and I kind of feel like in that space, it maybe was, and which people don't always associate religious spaces as a safe space, sometimes because they have so much baggage and hurt from wherever their own particular traditions. But when you
Mm,
come into an interfaith space where all these different groups, everybody is a little bit more careful, I think, because you already know that when you're in this space that we don't all agree. You know that that's there. You
yeah.
know off top that there's some differences, and people are living their lives and their beliefs out intentionally.
Hmm.
You already know that. And so I think you come with a little bit more caution and a little bit more grace, which can make space for you as a woman to do what you did. And knowing
Mm.
that it wasn't going to come with like some severe backlash. Nobody could tell you some holy text of why you need to be in your space, because everybody got a holy text in that room that's different. So
That's
it
right.
wasn't just be that they could beat you over head with some kind of dogma as to why you needed to be quiet or not. So yeah, that's cool. But I really encourage, if you're listening to this, learn more about interfaith in your area. I'm sure it's an interfaith organization. And it really includes all faith, people of what we would say no faith to, I always say, people who are the most devout whatever. Um, so it's not leaving anybody out. So if you identify as agnostic or atheist, you're part of that community as well. It's really about how do we all, with all our various belief systems, find a way to honor the dignity of all humans. And
Totally.
how our belief system helps us to do that. And really, the work that I'm doing now with race and faith, um, outside of, I mean, Not Your Mama's Tea is my fun place, because I do anti-racism work. That's what I do. That's my day job, if you will.
Mm.
Um, is doing and facilitating conversations about racism and providing some consulting and coaching along the way for folks who really want to do it. And so, as you know, it's a lot of diversity initiatives happening now. And so sometimes people will send me jobs or opportunities and say, "Hey, you want to do this, that?" And what I realized after going through a couple of processes is I'm an anti-racist person. If I can't talk about racism, if racism can't be centered, and if it's
Mm.
not centered, I'm not going to be comfortable.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I think
Mhm.
a lot of times people want to do diversity, but they don't want to be anti-racist. That's not going to work. If you learn how to be anti-racist first, everything else will fall in line.
And the work must have, or I wonder if the work has changed in the last year because our collective consciousness or part consciousness in certain parts of the community, especially I would say white people, has really changed since the murder of George Floyd.
Yeah.
Has it really changed? Has the work changed for you?
I think more people, the change I've seen is that more people are hiring, so many companies are hiring a DEI person.
Mm-hmm.
More companies are putting that into the portfolio. But I think you have to recognize this is a culture. It's not just like
Right.
HR, and it's not just some policy. It has to be a cultural way of being. You have to be anti-racist, in my opinion. Uh, and so really driving home, so people are really comfortable. If you come and talk about implicit bias or microaggressions, they'll tolerate that. If you really want to get into the
Right.
to the part about what does it mean to be racist, what is happening here that is perpetuating white supremacy, they're gonna be less comfortable with that conversation. But that's at the root of the microaggressions, the implicit bias, all these different things. You have to be able to talk about white supremacy and how it works and those systems that are at work right now in our country. And so I think, and that, of course, in the workplace. And so for me, my work, which I do, I think I have the grace to do it. It's not because I always enjoy it, but I'm really passionate about how do we get at, especially as people of faith, because after doing some work, I did some work with the YWCA for a while, and I really felt like after doing that, like we really, for me being a Christian and working at that time with the Lutheran church, I'm like, people of faith need some more specific targeting. You have to really go in there. You got to get all up in their space, really, to really help them see how they in their own institutions are perpetuating white supremacy. And so that's really why I started Race and Faith, is to say, and give space for people to unpack their own thinking and their own belief system, which a lot of times if you do anti-racism trainings and things like that, they're scared of faith. And that's the other thing I was like, if you really want to talk about real inclusion, inclusion includes faith. If you can't really get to that point either, a lot of people struggle. A lot of companies struggle with that too. Girl, I could be going all over the place with that. We're talking all day.
But it's interesting because I think that you talk about faith in a way that resonates with me, which is really broad and really inclusive. And I do think that we have to take back that language of faith, because it has been, for the past decades and maybe longer, has been, I'm sure certainly longer, has been really owned and co-opted by people who preach intolerance as part of faith. And even more than that, I would say, not just sort of, in a malicious way, that, in my faith community, I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear, and fear brings out the, not the best of us sometimes. And so I think there's fear of, it can be, it's funny because the Jewish community on the one hand is super liberal, like the after Black women, the highest percentage of Democratic voters, altogether, like very dependable, liberal American Jews have been at the forefront of almost every social movement since the community's been here, on the one hand. On the other hand, I think there's a real internal fight in the community about how we talk about those things. Like, we talk about those things, but that doesn't mean anything. What I mean is there is tension between those who say we are constantly beleaguered and we have to watch out for ourselves only, and we have to always be looking for anti-Semitism, and also it is true. It's true that anti-Semitism is on the rise. It's true, all of these things. And then there are those who say we have to be there for others. And the truth is that, like, they're all true. And it's really interesting. I don't know if you've read the work of Eric Ward, but he talks about how anti-Semitism is in the roots of the white supremacist system in this country, which is so interesting. I think about how Jews listen to this conversation. In some ways, Jews are conditionally white in this country, even though, like, for sure I'm white, for sure, and I get all the privileges of being white. I can go look at an apartment in any neighborhood most neighborhoods I want, and nobody's gonna flinch. I know that. Also, I know that throughout history, Jews have been conditionally white. Like, you peel the layer off, and it's the people who hate Black people are the people who hate Jews, no matter what color we are. But Eric Ward talks about, it's really interesting. His work is really interesting.
I did read his article. I know another lady. Her name is Debbie. Her last name is escaping me. She's from Milwaukee. Her family's in the Fox Point area, and she doesn't live here anymore. She's lived in Denver now, but we connected because we do the same kind of work, except for she does her anti-racism work with the Jewish community, and she works with synagogues to address racism and just kind of some of the things you're already saying because of that battle, and even dealing with, like, some of the colorism that happens within Jewish communities.
Totally.
So it's just we really connected, and she's the one who sent me the Eric Ward article.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely have. She's helped me with some of those conversations as well. And I just appreciate the work that she's been trying to do
Mm,
in the synagogues in her area. Because I think that's for us. We have to have this conversation. Um, all of us who are threatened by white supremacy.
hmm
We need to have a real conversation. And we definitely have to talk about the anti-blackness that exists. And I think if we can really address that, we have to own it, address it, accept that that exists, even within our communities who are, those of us that are still oppressed by white supremacy. We got these issues because whiteness is always centered. But like you said, it doesn't mean that you can't champion other things, because
Right.
the real
Right.
enemy is white supremacy.
That's
Not
right.
me. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
right.
And so I think
That's right.
we have those, what we might say, from me being Christian, those come to Jesus moments, which I'm sure you heard that phrase before. Uh,
Yes, I think I used that phrase, which is maybe inappropriate.
uh, but yeah, we have to get into that space and be real with each other so that we can really get at the real enemy, which is white
It-
supremacy. Until we
yeah.
can do that, then that allows white supremacy the room to keep operating, not just with these extremists, because that's just one aspect of white supremacy. That's
Mhm.
not the totality of the system.
Right.
Um,
It's
so
the way it's the way our culture is structured. You know, I think I would even go further. I
hey
think
y'all,
that
this is an intense tea talk, so I hope that people are absorbing it and can take all the information because it's good.
I would even go further. I think, look at what has happened. So yes, anti-Semitism is rising. Yes. Also, just to put it into context, um, this is a great period in American history. Like the anti-Semitism is on the edges of our society, but what's at the center of our society is still the killing of black and brown unarmed people. And so, like, I look at what's happened this week,
I
just this
know,
week. God, and what in Chicago,
I know.
I
I didn't watch that video, and I'm not gonna watch it. I
I
can't. I
didn't
didn't
either.
watch the killing of George Floyd. I can't watch that stuff. I
No,
will.
it's
I will be sick.
yeah. It's awful. Actually,
It's
I wonder if that's. I had a dream. I had a dream. Let's see, that it must have been informed by that because I think I woke up in the middle of the night and read an article about the killing in Chicago, and then I had a dream that somebody killed my aunt. A young
oh
man killed my aunt. So it must have been. I didn't realize where it came from. It must have come from there.
yeah.
Ugh. It's so awful. So I think like there's no like we have to be really clear about the big what without put like competing.
Right.
Whose
Right.
suffering is
Right.
worse. The America's most beloved hatred, most beloved sin, worst sin is racism against black and brown people. So like
Right.
that's super clear to me as a Jew, and I have to figure out how to be an ally. And actually, just to get more personal, that I had for 18 years in Milwaukee, I had a platform on which to get involved in issues, and I now like I made a whole change in my life, and I moved to a new community that's huge. Chicago's enormous, and I'm in a job that is in a totally different field, and I have kind of struggled to know how to plug in, frankly. And I don't, I know that I'm not doing enough. I know I'm not. I've done, I've showed up at protests a little bit. I've contributed financially a little bit, but I got some stimulus money. I'm going to try to figure out if I can do some good with it, but I'm
Oh,
not, I'm
I'll help
super,
you with what to do with your stimulus money and what to do if you ain't even got to worry. I will help you. Girl, it's Alana, and I do feel emotional, but it really is gonna take all of us. It is, we're at a detrimental space. And for me as a black woman, um, it's very painful. My cousin texted me yesterday morning, like, this is psychological terrorism. And I was like, this is analogous to, if hopefully I'm saying it right. This is like when lynchings were happening, and I was like, our grandparents and great grandparents, it's like when they had to see those bodies swinging from the trees, where the threat that the
Strange
Klan or
thing.
whoever would just come to your house
Right.
and rape your mom, or be able to snatch your dad out the house and just do all of these things that you living in this constant state of knowing that at any moment a white person could kill you, hurt you,
Yeah.
take away something that means how you live your life. And I said, now with social media, it's this, we get to still live in that same intensity of fear, because we get all these messages now across our feed. You can see, it's not that these things weren't happening, but because we didn't always have the cameras or things like that, we didn't always know about it. So now it's just, we're in this place of just hyper awareness, as the same, I think, of when of our great grandparents. They lived in the hyper awareness because it was actually happening so much in the South, that's what started the Great Migration. So
God, Rhonda, I really feel that. I really feel like it's got to be a huge act of resistance or defiance to hold your head up high.
oh, to live in joy as a Black person is resistance. I read this wonderful article. It says depression as an act of resistance. And it was so powerful to me, because you wouldn't think of depression as an act of resistance, but it was basically saying, when you're seeing people living, being the way, how many people are reporting being depressed in our country today, is showing you it's a resistance to capitalism and all those things that have been pronounced as this is what's supposed to make you happy and have joy. It, yeah, it was
Right.
just so
It's a,
powerful.
it's a resistance to
Let's
pretending.
switch. Yes, let's switch gears a little bit. Because I obviously, you and I, we could keep talking about this, and we can definitely talk some more about this offline. Because it's a necessary
And you
conversation.
really moved me. You really, actually, really moved me.
Well, I mean, the truth is the truth, right? And this is the space that I think we're all living in, and it is definitely something that I'm dealing with on a daily. I feel deep. That's why I tell people, I don't apologize for loving Black people, loving myself, for centering Black people on what I do, and calling out white supremacy. I'm not going to apologize for that. Ain't no shame in that. It's a shame in not supporting it. It's a shame in trying to not do what you need to do to try to get it. So
Right.
many people are clueless on purpose. That's what the shame is.
Right.
Anyways, I want to know what woman is inspiring you these days.
I did not prepare for this question. I have to tell you that I have my first answer. It is women, right? Not just woman.
You can say just one woman or two women.
Yeah.
You can say whatever, whoever you want.
Well, the first thing is
Most
that I,
A lot of women, when I ask them that question, they have a list of women. So,
yeah, I'll have a list. But the one that comes to mind right away is I listened to Michelle Obama's book while I was in transit, so it took me a long time, and I finished it finally, and she's amazing. She's amazing. And I was just she was a great storyteller too, but I was very moved and inspired by her um, thoughtfulness and the way, I think that the thing that I these days really appreciate about lots of women is the um, ability to hold complexity and to hold tension. I just feel like the part of the world that doesn't suit me. So I told you that I'm a beginner in midlife again, right? This is like my third career and change, and I again moved to a totally new place, doing totally new things, and it's like I'm a child again, right? Um, except with the life experience and maybe some knowledge of a 53-year-old. I really, the part of life that doesn't suit me is all of this certainty, all of this, like, I get it all figured out. And like
uh,
people who take really complicated things and make them into these very clear
small.
nuggets of, small things with hard boundaries around them. So I appreciate any woman who who can mess it up, but can not mess it up, who can appropriately represent how things are complicated. Like my favorite expression lately is "and yet," and yet, like this
Yeah.
is true, and yet this is also true. Um, um, I heard Elsie talk about Amanda Gorman, and what I like about her actually is she is gutsy and so smart and just like so confident. I just love that she like reframed what the poem is in the inauguration and everywhere else. Like she's just strong and smart and gutsy. Um, Other women? I don't know. Can I just talk about traits of women?
You
Um,
can.
yeah, so I think that certainty thing, I'm less interested in certainty than I am in, I'm really less interested in certainty than I am in questions. I'm really working on figuring out how to ask good questions. And I'm also really thinking something's been like in my head. Um, there's a recent article, not so recent article, but I read something recently um, about how men who joke during public speaking are seen as having good senses of humor and being clever, and women who joke when they're doing speaking doing presentations are seen as concealing lack of self-esteem.
Mm.
And come on. So, but I've been thinking that I over the course of the years when I did a lot of public speaking, I really worked on being adorable and funny and being likable and relatable. And I thought, what would happen if I paid less attention to being likable and I learned how to communicate super clearly? So I've been
Mm.
thinking, like, what happens if I'm still smiling because I've, 50 years of being a woman, like, but what happens if I'm less focused on being adorable and more focused. I mean, not that adorable is the thing that defines me, but more focused on communicating a clear and powerful message. So it's just something I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Who does that? That would be the proper answer to tell you that's who I'm inspired by.
Well, tell me what you hope for. We got a couple minutes before I have to jump on to my next person. Tell me what's your hope for women?
Hope for women. Um, well, I think that nothing changes. It actually related to the conversation about race. Nothing changes without people pushing for change. So I really admire the women who push for change, who push for this something that's happened. It's big in the Jewish community is people who push to have salaries included in job descriptions. And it's just a nugget, but it is so important because when you force women to to apply for a job without knowing what it pays, you're setting them up to negotiate. And women, we know, are less comfortable negotiating and will do worse. So I love that the women who are pushing for change, like they are pushing for change, and I I am excited about not just having women in more spaces, but having more spaces become better because women are in them, having them have to change the way we communicate. It's very interesting being in Chicago because it's so different than Milwaukee. There is I'm seeing a lot of like toxic male behavior in spaces, and I know how to deal with that. It's fine, but a lot of men who are like who sort of try to make you feel small. And one of the wonderful things about being a middle-aged person who has some experience is that I can go, yeah, 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 okay, okay, honey. And maybe for being a mother, I can be like, I've told this story many times, and maybe but one of the tools that I acquired at some point, I had a boss, we were at a conference, and he snapped at me in front of other people and was really, really sort of awful to me. And I don't know how this happened, but I was like my mother identity just came out, and I reached over and I touched him on the shoulder. And he wasn't a big touchy person. I touched him and I said, "It's okay. It's okay. We're talking about the same thing." But it was like I could mother him. I thought, what an amazing tool. Like, what if there was more mother presence in
Mm.
all of our spaces,
Right. Right. Get to that mother God. aspect that we
Like
need
be
more in the world. Yeah.
like be a good listener, be patient, but be really clear about our values. Like to me, that's what it means to have women who have in spaces mothers are not, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me switch and wrap up and just share with you what I've been working on with Not
Oh,
Your
good.
Mama's Tea.
I want to
You
hear.
may have seen some of it, but well, as you know, we were having the tea parties, but because of COVID, we haven't been doing that in that way because people just weren't really comfortable with being with people they didn't know.
Sure.
So I started offering private tea parties. So we'll either do them virtually or in person, but for in person up to 8 to 12 people, keeping it still small. But on virtually, you have up to 50 people if you want to. So it's a couple levels we'll offer. Either you can have a tea tasting or a tea party without a tea tasting. And that's been really fun. I'm working with a wonderful lady who is really good at walking people through how to taste the different teas and things like that. So that's fun. We if you do the tea tasting, we provide 3 different teas that you can prepare and sample with us, and it's really a fun thing. So I'm encouraging people to think about having a tea party, either virtually or having your own private one in your space for up to 8 to 12 people. So we started doing that, but I also created these meditation cards, which I'm really happy about, and offering them now for pre-order, which I'm going to show you a video of these cards. I wrote these cards in 2018 after I had lost this job I was on due to lack of funding, and I wrote the cards in one night. It's kind of all just it just started all coming out of me, but it took a while before I got to the art.
Mm.
What would it look like? And one of my friends had on her feed this art, and I was like, that is exactly what I need for my card. So I wrote her like, hey, can I have that? She said yes, and we started working on it together last year, and it's finally come to manifestation. So I'm really happy to
Oh,
share
I'm
it.
excited to see.
Okay, here we go. Ta-da! Oh, there.
They're gorgeous. They're so gorgeous. I
Ta-da!
love
So it's
the
40 cards in a deck.
how many?
40, 40.
Mm-hmm.
40 cards in a deck. And the deck is $40. So buy one for you, buy one for your friends. Or you could do an Oprah, you get a deck, everybody gets a deck on you.
Yes, I
But no,
love that.
it is a really it's the artist is phenomenal, as you can tell. Her work is just I love it.
How do they connect to tea?
Um, it connects to women
Mm-hmm.
more than well, they're succulents, and it is a prickly pear. It's a prickly pear tea, so it is a
Sure.
tea. It's a cactus tea, that is available that you can have. And I will for people who order them before the 30th. I'm giving away tea, but yeah, so it is a tea you can make and get from cactus, and those are succulent plants. But I really like them because I felt like somehow that the woman in the cactus form, we're calling them Femi babes now, I think, or something. I forgot, prickly femmes or something. But I just loved it because I thought like, well, doesn't this kind of represent the woman in the sense that
Hmm.
it's a plant, it's nourishing, it has a tough exterior, but it's also feeds, if you know, because it's a plant, it
Hmm.
gives life. It's just so I just love. I felt like, oh, this just can speak to that complexity that you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what I feel about those images. And just
That's
using the
beautiful.
succulents and the cactuses in that way. I think it captured the complexity of women.
I love
So
it. They're
anywho,
gorgeous. Thanks for sharing them.
yes, thank you for sharing your time with me this morning. I Let's talk again. I think we got a lot more to talk about. Hope you have a good rest of the day.
So fun. I'm honored and humbled. I appreciate it.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
Rhonda.